All right, so from that health story, we go to this health story. My guest is named Paul Seegert. He's managing partner at PCS Advisers, an employee healthcare benefits consulting firm in Northern California. And he's got, I saw the press release for the story he's got, which immediately struck me. I'm just a guy who hates injustice. I may love capitalism, but I hate injustice. And this is so wrong. And I saw his story and I said, we've got to get this out and talk about it. So Paul Seegert, welcome to the Wayne Allyn Root Show.
Thank you for having me, Wayne. Glad to be with you.
I mean, and this story, Paul, you're a witness, right? In the break, I actually asked Paul if he was a liberal or a conservative because I figured he was a liberal because this is kind of a liberal story. But it's not. It's a human story. It's got nothing to do with liberal. So here's the story. So in the middle of this terrible COVID pandemic, lots of people have been to the hospital and they can't pay their bills. And a specific hospital chain called Community Health Systems, and they have 84 hospitals from coast to coast. They're taking every patient to court in the middle of this disaster, even for as little as $201 owed. And then the court usually rules in their favor, and then they garnish your wages, and they're suing 19,000 patients for unpaid medical bills. Paul, it's a sickening story because aren't they getting rich with government aid?
Yeah, it's a crazy story. They posted $500 million, $511 million in net income for 2020. They received $705 million from the various legislation, the rescue legislation that came through to support the health care system that we all needed so much during the pandemic. So it's pretty incredible. And as you pointed out, it's largely procedural. These folks don't have the means to pay the bill. They certainly don't have the means to get an attorney and defend themselves. So it just gets processed through the system and garnished from their wages.
When you talk, there's two stats here. I want to make sure I get it right. So first of all, this same company that's suing everybody, suing 19,000 patients, called Community Health Systems, they enjoyed their most profitable year in a decade, $511 million in net income.
That's right.
Is that separate from the $705 million in pandemic aid? So they got $1.2 billion in 1 year, or is that part of that?
I think I'm going to try to be optimistic in the midst of this story and say it's inclusive of that. But what it tells you is that the rest of the industry got beat up a little bit because their beds were empty. And these folks found a way to come out on top in I think it's pretty safe to say, a pretty ruthless fashion.
Well, I mean, I know a lot of doctors in Vegas that deal in like Medicaid patients, right? So everybody in their office is poor. Most of the people in their office are minorities. Most of them are black. Most of them are Hispanic, illegal aliens. And they make a fortune off getting paid by Medicaid. I used to hear Medicaid was very, very cheap and doctors didn't want to take it because it doesn't pay you enough. I think over the years, liberals have made sure Medicaid is not cheap anymore. It's probably robust. And these doctors are making a fortune. This healthcare system must do the same thing. They must specialize in taking poor people and minorities who they know can't pay the bill. And then the next thing you know, they sue them, they get awarded in court, they garnish their wages, and boom, everybody's off to the races making money, right?
Yeah, and this is a problem that's been brewing. This is kind of a good example of what's wrong with the system right now. There's a problem that's been brewing since the ACA kicked in. That set up a lot of what we're seeing happening today. 10 years ago, our average healthcare spending was less than $5,000 per person in this country. 10 years later, it's north of $10,000. And while it's, positive that more people have coverage, that's really the only thing we can point to with the ACA and say this was potentially a positive outcome, that more people got coverage. What we also did was shift a lot of cost to the consumer in that period of time. The average deductible right now on these ACA plans, that the majority of, they picked up 20 million new customers, the insurance companies, as a result of the ACA. The average plan has a $5,000 deductible, much higher out-of-pocket max than that, and the average American has less than $400 in savings. This is a recipe for disaster, and you see what they're able to do.
We're talking to Paul Seegert, managing partner at PCS Advisers, an employee healthcare benefits consulting firm in Northern California. Paul, I've talked about this ad nauseum, where they keep claiming, as a badge of honor, Democrats, that they gave, all the poor people Obamacare. And there's two arguments to that. Number one, okay, great. If on Christmas morning I say I'm giving all of your money Paul, I'm going to take all of your money and your kids will have no presents, and I'm going to redistribute it to all the poor people down the street. Of course, they're going to be happy, but they just stole your money to give them a nice Christmas. That's all Obamacare was. It wasn't an achievement. They stole the middle class's money and small business money, and they rearranged it, and they gave it out to poor people. Well, of course they're going to be happy they got something free. It's not an achievement to steal from one group and give it to another. So that's the first argument I have. But the second one is they didn't really give anything to all those people because their deductibles are so high. And you just backed me up. I heard many of them are as high as $10,000 on the Obamacare exchange. Yeah. So you've got nothing because you'll never get paid with a $10,000 deductible.
Here's the results. Here's our report card. Insured Americans hold north of $85 billion in medical debt. We added $2.8 billion to that number just in recent months during COVID. That's Credit Karma, just their customers, not even the whole country. We've got 21 million people with past due medical bills, some of which were sued by this community health systems that we're talking about today. And 2/3 of bankruptcies that we see happening are as a result of medical bills. 3/4 of those people have insurance. So it hasn't been a big success, but we can point to some winners for sure. Health insurers have done well. There's 4 or 5 of them left, and Big
Pharma's done well.
Tremendously.
Right, Big Pharma.
Big Pharma's done tremendously well. Absolutely, and large hospital systems. While we're losing rural hospitals, and the 3
you just named. Hey, Paul, you just named 3 that did really well: Big Pharma and health insurance companies and big hospital chains. All 3 of them gave monstrous lobbying contributions to Democrat politicians. So, of course, they did well.
Well, and Wayne, that's exactly why we're not going to see any real change. What we'll see is that those big players will go along with is the government paying for more customers. But as soon as you go, like in the recent legislation that extended subsidies, or it added a couple years onto subsidies here for the ACA plans, that was all borrowed money, $200 billion. They didn't go and ask any of those players in the system for any money to help pay for that, which historically has been the case. When we've expanded healthcare, there's been taxes added on to the players in the system, whether it's a payroll, their premium taxes on the insurers, or taxes on the folks that are inventing things and so on, reduction in reimbursements to the providers. They always get at least some of it from the industry. And they didn't do that, and that was a unique first, kind of to your point there.
And everything you're talking about, I've experienced because I used to have Aetna health insurance, and then I switched because they became the sponsor of my radio show, and I thought I'm not going to sell something to my listeners unless I do it myself. So I took Christian Healthcare Sharing, which is Liberty Health Share. But when I had Aetna, I had a $10,000 deductible. So no matter what the bill was, the bill was on me. So they never paid for anything. And they were charging me $2,000 a month because of Obamacare. My bill went from $500 a month to $2,000 a month. So that's $1,500 a month. It went up because of Obama. $1,500 a month. That's $18,000 a year he cost me. And so, of course, poor people got free health care because you ripped off Wayne Root for $18,000. How many Wayne Roots are there? Millions and millions and millions. It's the biggest rip-off scam. What a scam. What a scam. I'm glad I got Liberty Health Share. Hey, Paul, you're a good guy. Thanks for bringing this to our attention. It's a bad scene out there in the medical world. Managing partner at PCS Advisers, an employee healthcare benefits consulting firm in Northern California, Paul Seegert. Thanks for being a good guy and exposing some bad guys. Thank you, Paul.
Glad to be here. Thank you.